All right, welcome to the Inspired to Be Authentic podcast. I am your host, Matt Lansadell. Inspired to Be Authentic is a podcast where we converse with people who are living their most authentic lives. We get real with our guests and talk openly about how they live with courage to be themselves. We explore barriers they've overcome to be more authentic and aligned to themselves and their purpose. Today is episode number 2, but it's actually episode number 1 with my very first guest. So I'm extremely excited. Before I introduce him, I want to just set the stage for what you guys can expect to get out of this episode. So we are going to be talking about trauma and authenticity. So oftentimes we can see our traumas as things that make us flawed. And when we feel flawed, we don't want to show up in the essence and the allness of who we are. So we hold aspects of ourselves back. So I've invited an expert in this area, somebody who can come in and talk a bit about trauma and how we can learn to heal our trauma and learn to just step into all that we are and our authenticity. So we have Seth Santoro joining us today. Welcome, Seth.
Hey, what's up? I'm so excited to be here.
So I want to I want to share your bio, and then I'll get you to kind of talk a little bit about yourself and just who you are. So, So Seth Eliot Santoro is an intuitive business coach, author, medium, HR advisor, keynote speaker, and death expert. That is a lot of good stuff there. We're going to dive into that today. Seth's vision is to inspire the world one by one to smile and therefore heal from the inside. He is an author of the book, How I Learned to Smile from the Inside. He believes we can all heal from absolutely anything. Combining his passion for corporate America, his training as a coach, and his metaphysical gifts of intuition and mediumship, Seth partners with clients to reframe their minds, re-engage in their present, and create a better legacy, future, and fulfilling life for themselves and everyone around them. That's beautiful. Beautiful.
You read it so well.
So yeah, welcome. This is super exciting. I'm extremely honored to have you as my very first podcast guest.
Oh, I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, it's really exciting. So yeah, you know, these are all the titles that we have of ourselves. These are the labels, the things that define what we are. But I want to get you know, a little bit to understand who you are. Like what is what's the fire in your belly? What gets you going? And let's talk a bit about that to start off.
Sure. What gets me going? I love helping people heal. I mean, it's plain and simple. We carry around so many traumas with us all the time, and it is apparent in everything that we do. And it affects everything about us. And then it affects, therefore, everyone around us. And then it's just like this rippling effect. Yeah. So my main thing is to heal people in life now. Okay. And I also love to heal people through death. Meaning, you know, as the medium side of me, I know I'm sure you have many questions. But helping people heal through their deceased loved ones, and intuitive readings where we talk about their not so distant past, their present, and their not so distant future, and then healing CEOs and politicians as they make the important decisions that affect so many people around them. So I could talk about that all day long, but that's what really gets me going.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. Why don't we talk a bit about your origin story? Like young Seth, how did this all develop? How did this transpire?
Well, when I was 5 years old, I knew that I wanted to help the world heal in some way. I knew that I wanted to be either a fireman, a figure skater, or an actor or a lawyer. Like, I was 5, right? So don't judge me for that. But I remember exactly where I was, and I remember the feeling I had that I had to heal and help save the world somehow. And ever since then, I became an overachiever, a super overachiever. Actually, probably the learning disability that I have when I was growing up also definitely helped me to be a perfectionist and strive for excellence in everything I did. So, you know, of course, I was like valedictorian, and, you know, I sang at all the games, all the basketball games. I was just very well liked, and I went to college at like 16, and I went to, it was just everything I did. I had to do better for me, not for anyone else other than me, you know, because I had something to prove to myself. And I think it was in my 20s, my early 20s, I started in corporate America, and I kind of had my first, I guess, existentialist crisis, realizing that there's so much more to this. There's so much more to life than this, you know? So that's when I started to practice meditation. I became a yoga teacher. I got into rebirthing, you know, like using breath and yogic breath to help kind of manifest whatever I wanted. And it was kind of a crazy time in my early 20s. And of course, you know, I quit my job and started working at a spa, and, you know, like became a certified yoga teacher, doing yoga classes. So it was kind of a crazy time. And during that time, I lost 5 close friends of mine, which was crazy. And it helped me to experience firsthand what it was I was going to do later in life in my 20s. I just thought it was normal that that you feel things about people, or I thought it was normal that you would talk to your best friend that died a couple weeks ago. You know, I thought that was somewhat normal. Although my definition of normal is my life, right? So, and most people think my life is pretty unique. So in my 20s, then I was in this wonderful relationship, and we broke up, and we were planning on moving to LA, and I was a New Yorker through and through, and I was like, let's do this. You know, I want to experience like a whole new life. And I started playing this game at parties where I would guess where people were from. With like a 90% accuracy, you know, and I would guess like usually in the United States, right? But and I would get their state right away, and it was so crazy. And I realized later on that it was me just tapping into my intuition all along. I just didn't realize. So fast forward in my 30s, you know, I was held at gunpoint by the cartels in Mexico. In my late 20s, I was diagnosed with cancer. I survived like cancer. I mean, there's just, I experienced all these things in my life that when my boyfriend at the time seroconverted to HIV positive, that was the moment that I guess the moment or a couple hours that I realized I'm about to go through something. You know, it was like me rushing back. I was working in Mexico and LA, between Mexico and LA at the time. And I was rushing back to see him. And I finally made the last plane from Mexico City to LA. And I was sweating and profusely. And I just sat down and I was like, wow, you are about to go through something huge. I mean, we are about to go through something huge. But I knew that at that moment, I had begun to think that there was a pattern to how I dealt with death, how I dealt with trauma, and how I dealt with crisis. So I then started to basically notate everything that I did and every experience that I was going through, so that I knew that it would one day become a book. And so that's what I did. And that's where How I Learned to Smile from the Inside came about. And luckily, I mean, I didn't seroconvert to HIV positive, but, you know, I stayed with him to a point where I then woke up and was like, wow, I deserve so much better, which is a whole other discussion. But but the origin then begins, right? Yeah. So after the book came out, I woke up again like 2 years later and was with someone where I was like, I deserve so much better. And I literally said that to him. And the next day, that's when the world and the universe opened up to me. Am I talking too much? Should I let you ask questions?
No, not at all. You're, as a podcast host, you just gave me like 1,000 bones. That was so amazing.
Okay.
You have a lot has happened in your life. I can see why you have the depth that you have in your being. And I can feel that depth that you have in your being. It's really, really cool. So I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of the audience. What bone would they want to pursue further? I'm thinking, why don't we go into the cartel story? Why don't you tell us a little bit about
that? Wow. Okay. Yeah. I was about around 30 years of age, and we had armored vehicles. Yeah. And at the time, the cartel situation in Mexico was at its highest.
Where in Mexico were you staying?
So this was northeast Mexico. So this was between Mexico City and Monterrey.
Okay.
I don't know how well you know Mexico.
Yeah, I know it quite well.
Okay. So San Luis Potosí and Tamaulipas were the 2 states that we were in between. So we had 2 ranches. I swear to God, we were growing lemons. That's what we were doing. Like, there's no pretext. I worked for this company where we were growing lemons and processing them. My bodyguard security was in the car driving, and we were stopped. We were constantly stopped by military and police and everyone because we had armored vehicles, and you had to register your armored vehicles and all that stuff. And the Department of Defense knew who we were, like in Mexico, because we had so many armored vehicles. Mm-hmm. So we were pulled over by the police, and I don't know how much everyone knows about Mexico, but the lower in terms of what they make, the more corrupt they can be, because obviously the cartels can pay them so much better. So I was nervous that we were pulled over by the police, and we were also in like a 6-lane weird highway, and they pulled us in the middle of it. And so I knew that was weird too. Why wouldn't you let us pull over to the side? So we get out of the car, and they always laugh at me because I'm like this tiny little boy, and they're like, oh, they always just assume that he's a senator's son or something. Mm-hmm. And so we get out, and I'm like, excuse me, can we pull over to the side there? And they're like, well, you should really stay where you are, but okay. So we went over to the side, and I'm not even joking. Within 5 minutes, there were 4 cars surrounding us, and literally so that we couldn't move. And
wow,
that was my first kind of inclination that this was not a normal kind of pullover, you know? And then they started to ransack the vehicle essentially and tear up everything. Now, if it were the military police, they basically take everything out and then put it right back in exactly where it was. But the police could care less, and the cartels could care less. And of course, I had 2 phones, I had 2 laptops. I mean, I was prime, prime for that. So within about 15 minutes, I want to say gordo, which is the word for fatso in Spanish. It's a term of endearment. But anyway, this like guy comes up in this white Jetta, and he gets out of his car, and he has like this pink phone with him. I'll never forget. It's like a Barbie phone. And he walks over to the car, and I could tell he was one of the bosses. You know, everyone kept calling him Jefe. Oh, and by the way, did I mention that there's 6 machine guns on me at the time, right? So it's not like, this is not like normal at this point. So I have to give him my passport, you know, with 6 guns at my head. And my security guard is like freaking out. And I speak Spanish fluently. And so sometimes when we got pulled over, I would pretend that I didn't speak Spanish. Mm-hmm. But this time I was very well assured that yes, I definitely speak Spanish. So anyway, so there's 6 guns on my head. The guy, the gordo guy, the guy in the white Volvo, I did not like him, and he did not like me. And he kept asking all these questions about what's on my phone and what's on my laptop. 45 minutes later, we're still in the same thing. My security guard is still like almost crying, and I'm like, aren't you supposed to be protecting me right now? Because I kept calming him down. And I started to get fresher with the you're getting like the unabridged version, but I started to get fresher with the guy in the white Volkswagen, and he was just a dick, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And he kept asking the same questions over and over. And I finally said, you know, I think we should call my friend Lieutenant Gonzalez. And Lieutenant Gonzalez had frequented our lemon growing ranches looking for cartels, because there was so thousands and thousands of hectares, right, of lemons. So it was a great place. And every time he came, I would always give him and his crew like Diet Cokes, and anything they wanted, right, like waters. So the last time I was there, preceding this event, he said, you know, if you ever get in a situation where you feel uncomfortable with the police or anyone else, here's my number, call me. So I immediately was like, oh my God, why don't we call Lieutenant Gonzalez? And the guy to my left gets closer to my head, like with the gun, he gets closer to my head, like it's literally cocked at my head. And the guy's, you know, like, what do you know Lieutenant Gonzalez? I was like, of course. I was like, he comes to our ranches all the time. And by the way, these were the Zetas. So they were a very, very tech savvy company, so or cartel. So they knew who I was. They knew, they wanted the car. They'd been casing it for months. They did, by the way, get it a month later. They literally just almost nearly killed my other security guard, left him for dead. He lived, thank God, but got the vehicle. Anyway, but I wasn't having that today. Like that day, I was like, I said to him, I was like, why don't you just take the effing car? And in English, I said it at first, because I knew he understood English. And he's like, no entiendo. Like, I don't understand. And I was like, and then I told him in Spanish, like, take the car. Just leave us and take the car. He's like, I don't want your car. I was like, well, then why are you pulling me over? He had no reason. So anyway, back to Lieutenant Gonzalez. So I could see the fear in everyone's eyes at that moment. Sorry, I'm going all over the place. But by the way, the owners of the company at the time were best friends with the Clintons, and Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State at the time.
Okay.
So they knew that if they decided to take the car or hurt us, they would have to deal with the Clintons, and they probably didn't want to do that at that moment, right? So after I threatened Lieutenant Gonzalez, he was like, you don't know who he is. And I was like, of course I do. And I pick up the phone and he's like, put that phone down. And of course the gun then goes into my head. And I'm like, oh God, this is not a good situation. And I think I almost peed my pants. I'm not sure at that time. But I literally was like, I called him and I was like, let's call him. And then he's like, put your phone down. And I was like, and the guy grabbed my phone, takes it off. And then I was like, okay, so what are we doing here then? Like, what do you want? And he's like, and then he calls his jefe, his boss. And then finally they decide that they want the car or me or anyone else. So literally within 60 seconds, everyone was gone. Everyone's gone. My security guard starts crying, like literally starts crying. And
That'd be me.
Right. Well, yeah, wait, in all fairness. And so I calmed him down and he called his security people and he's like, oh my God, we were just pulled over by the set that was the cartel, blah, blah. Yeah. I call my boss and I tell him the whole story. I mean, I'm laughing about it now, but it was not funny.
Can imagine.
We get to the other ranch about an hour later, and I go to the bathroom and I call my boyfriend at the time, and then I start crying because I'm like, oh my God, what just happened? And I just lived through that, and I saved the car. I mean, I don't care about myself. Like I saved this car, which was just a Suburban, Anyway, so I kissed the ground I walked on. And for that job, I never went back to Mexico. It was not out of, it was out of fear, of course, but my boss was so impressed with me because it was warring times. I mean, there were curfews at the time in both of our states. Like you had to be in the house at a certain time. Otherwise, you could be out in harm's way. We saw bodies burning. Heads were found 2 kilometers away from where I slept. I mean, it was a crazy time. So where I'm going with this is, whenever I tell it, I always take some breaths afterwards because it's kind of. It's intense. But I realized that no matter how much they paid me, a 6-figure job was not worth my life. No. I also realized that, wow, what a really cool story to then help other people who are kidnapped or held at gunpoint. And by the way, this is the second time in my life I was held at gunpoint. I was held at gunpoint 20 years prior to that in Colombia because the cartels really love me, apparently. Anyway, so it's quite the story. But I love telling it, and then I love talking to other people who've been through similar situations, because there's nothing like having 6 guns on your head, and not guns like these are the guns that we're not supposed to have. Totally, yeah. Like machine guns, whatever. So yeah.
Well, this interview is really about trauma, right? And when we're looking at trauma, these are the types of things that can happen to us that create trauma, traumatic response in our lives. What sort of impact did this situation have on you in your life?
Yeah, very good question. So about a month later, as I told you, my bodyguard, or my one of my good friends and bodyguard security, was nearly killed, and they got the car. And that's when, for me, reality sunk in, that, holy shit, this just happened to me. And this is not going away. It's not getting better. And it was during that time that he was lost. Like we knew that he was in the car because we obviously bugged the cars before this. And so we knew he was alive barely. And it was during that time that we were searching for him and trying to find him that, for me, I remember every minute of what I did that day. It was so specific about what happened. And so for me, like, we can talk about my book, obviously, but there are several stages that I believe that we all go through. And the significant, well, it's SMILE. I use the acronym of SMILE, right?
Yeah.
So we'll just go there quickly because it helps how I tell
Totally.
the story.
Yeah, it's
So
perfect.
so S is good segue. So S is for shock, right? Because we
Yeah.
can't really get around that. Then I believe that M is for mock acceptance, which is my way of saying part denial and part acceptance. So it's the moments where someone dies in our life and we have to plan the funeral, their memorial service, or the celebration of life, and we actually get it done, and we have no idea how we get it done, and we don't remember anything about it, but we get it done because we have to get it done. So I believe it's the body's defense mechanism. And it's
Yeah.
how the body, mind, and soul kind of allow all of what's really going on to sink in, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So then we go through what I call in overwhelmed. And this is where I was talking about that day that we couldn't find my security guard. It's the poignant and significant emotions that we all must go through. And no one really likes me when I get to this part of any speech or public speaking event that I do, because I always tell people you have to feel your feelings.
Yeah.
You have to go through it, you
Yeah.
know, and no one wants to do that.
No.
But when you ask, like, that was the moment where I think I was in real big denial, like mock acceptance, for about a month after it happened, August 11th, 2000. Oh, good. I'm so glad I forgot the date. 2011, I think. Anyway, so it was that poignant emotions, and then so I was I don't want to say empty, but I was so numb that day, so numb that, like, I couldn't cry, I couldn't laugh, I couldn't do anything. All I could do was hope and pray that he was okay.
Mm-hmm.
So finally, when they found him, that's when, like, the goosebumps hit. My mother was like, "What's wrong with you today?" And I just started crying, you know, like, and I hadn't told them yet because they, you know, like, it took me a minute to tell anyone really, like, what had happened to me. So, you know, and it took months. Like, I literally did transition for 4 months out of that position, and I loved that position. It was crazy and crazy adventures every day and warring times, but it was the most amazing job I ever had.
Yeah.
And
what were you doing exactly?
And so it took me. So I was the head of HR and all resources. So I basically handled everything. I was like the number 2 person in charge, except for the lemon operations and production that was handled by coworkers.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I made sure that, you know, there were 150 employees. There were 2 ranches, and I basically kind of, the heads of farming for a while reported to me. It was kind of a crazy gig.
Cool.
Anyway, so it took several months for me to go to the next level, which is learning, right? Which is the L in SMILE, right? The SMILE method. And so that's where we gain insight and reflect upon what has happened to us. And I think it was around December, January where I stopped and, like, left that job, that I think life started to become fun again for me. It was, you know, I mean, I'm a happy person, you know, and, like, I'm smiling all the time, and my mother said I was born smiling, you know. So during that time I was still smiling, but there was something not completely right about me, and I was really going through this again, all these emotions, right? So the learning happened when I realized what an incredible experience that I can use for the rest of my life, as not as a hindrance, but I can use it as something that I ever overcame in my life, something that gave me more purpose, and to use that which I had been through to help other people. I mean, that was really, I think, what helped me get to the last stage, which is embrace, which is because I don't feel like acceptance is enough anymore.
Yeah.
Right. I just don't think 21st century, we need to enthusiastically kind of embrace what happens to us and use it in every way and take advantage of it to help other people.
Yeah. I love that. What I want to just ask you, what does that look like? Because I think a lot of people that are listening to this, the words acceptance, I do agree that we need an updated term if we want to become aligned to who we are. So embracing, or even allowance. I like the word allowance, like allow your experience to be. So how do people embrace these things, or their adversity, and turn that into their strength?
Yeah, I mean, I can answer that in a lot of ways, but I want to just, in the context of my SMILE method, method, like it's a method
Totally,
to heal,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I want to say to everyone is you have to do the work. And the work in this case is you have to go through the shock. You have to go through the acceptance. You have to go through the feelings, the emotions. And then you get to a point where you're far enough away and removed that you can then gain insight and reflect. For example, even you can use it for any type of crisis, any type of loss. So it works for death, it works for a relationship, it works for a job. I mean, nowadays, like so many people unfortunately are losing their jobs because of this lovely COVID-19 situation. So it's really getting to a point where you can say thank you. And I'm grateful that I had time with that person who passed away. I'm grateful that I had that job because I realized this is what I don't want, or this is what I do want. And I had the best boss, and that's the boss that I want to be that boss, you know? So it's about really being able to understand and be grateful for that which you've been through. And then, so this is all in the compasses of doing the work, you know? And it's not easy. It's not easy at all. And I feel like most people get stuck in the learning stage. Well, I say some people get stuck in the emotions because they don't want to go through them, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like the majority of people get stuck in the learning because people don't take the time to learn from what they've been through and to reflect upon what they've been. So once you get to the embrace, and by the way, this is not like a chronological order, always pretty kind of thing, right? So when I tell the story, even like it brings me back and it grounds me for a minute, and it's like, whoa, and I start to feel, I feel something, I feel emotions about it, you know? Like that was scary. That was scary moments in my life. And then once again, I'm like, no, but I've learned so much. And it's one of the stories that I love telling because it helps people understand that you can go through really anything and still be able to embrace what happened to you and smile at the end of the day. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, it did. And it brought up another question, which is good.
Okay.
So what would you say the most tangible skill that you could teach the audience that's helped you heal through your own trauma?
I think there are a couple things.
Sure, yeah. More than
I think
merrier.
knowing that this is temporary and that this will pass, I believe that gives hope. And I feel hope is one of the most powerful, I don't know if you call it emotions or whatever, but it's one of the most important feelings and the most helpful feelings. I remember being stuck in jobs, and I would get up and be so upset about going to that job and feeling so unalignment with what I wanted to do in my life. And the only thing that would help me was me saying to myself, this is just temporary. This is just temporary. You will get through this. You're not always going to be stuck here, you know? I also feel that it's really important to allow yourself, awareness. That's another big one. So in order to move forward from anything, we need to become aware of where we are with that situation, with that death, with that relationship, right? That awareness is absolutely key to moving forward, because once you're aware, then you can acknowledge where you are.
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
And then from acknowledgement, you can then allow, which is the word that you like, all those things all the emotions to kind of come through and flow through. And then that's where the hope comes in. And I want to say that it's so important to accept yourself and to start in order to love yourself in the end, right? Like I love myself most days. And I think that that's key to who I am as well, you know, because talking about authenticity and being the most authentic me, it's about acknowledging where I am and accepting who I am. And then for all my faults, for all my lovelies, all my non-lovelies, and being in that place of acceptance, and working on that. And every day, you know, like I haven't always loved myself, right? Like it was like what, 20-year process. So like it takes a time, you know, and there's still days that I'm like, why did you do that, silly? You know? But So yeah, that was a lot of things, but I think
Yeah.
working on loving yourself, becoming more aware of where you are in your life and how you are dealing with certain issues or challenges that have happened,
Mm-hmm.
acknowledging where you are, allowing how you're feeling to come through and go through that, and then getting to the other side, and then following the learning and the reflection,
Yeah.
and then the embracing at the end.
Yeah.
It's a constant. It's a constant. That's not the word I want. It's a consistent work in progress.
Yeah.
You
Always.
know? Yeah.
Always. What, how do you think trauma can be a barrier to somebody becoming more authentic?
This might sound terrible. I think that we all kind of at points in our life we live behind masks.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that's funny and ironic that I say that now, because we do live behind masks now.
Yeah.
But I think that it's I think that the more we don't deal with what's going on, or handle our situations and handle our own house, if you will, and get our house in order, I think the more it reflects in terms of what you put into the world, what you give to the world, or what you don't give to the world. Um, and I feel like you kind of get further and further from the veil of authenticity. Um, and also, you allow these challenges or obstacles to basically hinder who you are, and so you're behind the game or behind something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and you don't allow the true you to come through.
Yeah. How do people, for the viewers and the people listening, how do we know what our true us is?
Just breathing on that one for a second. Hold on.
Yeah, I'm a huge advocate for some breath. Take a moment and tune into that, because I feel like that's such an important question, and I think a lot of people are grappling with that. And you see it in younger adolescents. They're really grappling with, who am I, and how do I know who I really am and how I want to put myself forward, right? We have this idea of self-concept, but then again, it's just the way that the ego interprets the world around us and how we want the world around us to see us. But is that really who we are? Is that our authenticity?
Right. Personally speaking, I feel like my 20s were where I like partied like a rock star. I mean, I didn't really do any drugs myself, but I just tried everything in my 20s. And then in the 30s, I literally and physically and financially paid for my 20s,
Yeah.
And now that I'm in my early 40s, I'm starting, like, it's almost like all these layers have been peeled off, and I am starting to understand the real me has always been there. I've just evolved through the ages,
Mm-hmm.
My mother and many people have always told me, like, I'm an old soul,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I say that because I think in your 20s, I was struggling, as I told you, to be a yoga teacher, and like, having my existentialist crisis and meditating and yoga. Like, that was my way of seeing that there was more to me than meets the eye, So I feel like it's an evolutionary process of who you are. And I feel like, am I any less who I am when I was who I was in my 20s? No, absolutely not. I've learned so much more and gained so much more wisdom now,
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I believe so many people. There's so many 20-year-olds that I'm like, oh my God, I wish I had your insight into life that I, like 20 years later I have. So I think it's always in us. And I honestly truly believe that we always feel and intuitively what the right or appropriate thing to do is. And it's those obstacles and challenges that we've been through our entire lives that have informed us, and our survival mechanisms, right? And our behavioral patterns that disallow us to be our true selves.
Mm-hmm.
So I think and feel that the quicker that we can deal with everything that we've been through and handle it and manage it and like put it on a shelf safely and lovely, I feel like the closer we can get to the true us, if you will. But I also believe that we're always the true us. It's just, there's just shades of who
Yeah.
we are. And, I mean, I said something to someone yesterday and I was like, why did I say that? Like, why did you have to say that? And
Yeah.
and then I'm like, let it go. And then boom, I learned from it,
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I think what just came up for me when you said that is I have this kind of vision of myself and who I am by myself when nobody's around, right? I kind of feel like that's my authentic self. That's who I really am, because there's no one there to kind of to stifle me or make me feel like I have to deny aspects of myself. The question I have for you, if that let's say that's true for you as well, based off of percentage, how much of you do you show up in the percentage of who you are by yourself versus when you're around other people?
I think it's going to be it's very different than where you want to go with this. But for me, honestly, I feel like I'm 100% when I am I feel like I'm 100% with everyone else.
Yeah.
And I'm about, because I'm so hard on myself. So
Yeah.
I can go into like not a dark place, but I go into like a very self-reflective place. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's like 75% of who I am. So I feel like
So
when I'm,
So you are 75, you bring forth 75% of yourself around other people,
no, around
with
myself.
yourself. Oh,
And I'm
interesting.
100% with other people.
That's so fascinating. Yeah, you're right. It didn't go where I wanted it to go, but I feel like it's such a good little nugget, because what's the 25% of yourself that you're denying yourself?
I'm really hard on myself. So
Mhm.
I sit around and I'm like, what can I do for my YouTube channel today? What can I do to, like, I'm writing these children's movies in my head. I'm writing children's books with my husband. What am I doing? What do I need to be doing? Like, I get into this mode of like, you're not doing enough, right? Whereas the moment I interact with someone else, I know that I'm enough. I I know that I love giving to other people and I love receiving from other people. Also, like when I do a reading for people, intuitive readings or intuitive business coaching or mediumship readings, I feel more alive. I feel more grounded, right? So,
Yeah, I love it. So how could you take that and bring that piece around back to yourself? What are you not offering yourself that you're offering other into the relationship of others? Because a relationship with somebody else is an extension of the relationship we have with ourselves always. People are
mm,
mirroring back to us. So I find that very fascinating. So what can you extrapolate from that relationship and apply it to yourself?
I mean, for my entire life, I've always been working with the I'm not enough kind of words, right?
We're
So,
like the same character. Funny.
um,
Yeah.
so believing that I'm enough is always going to be my fun little challenge.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying listen, I love being by myself, and I'm being like a little bit exaggerative in the sense that 75% versus 100, because, but I still grapple with that. So I think believing that I am enough is what I get to do more,
Hmm.
or that everything I'm doing is, I think you might have said this to me, is like the divine time, right? So if it's not the right time, then, you know, I maybe I'm not supposed to be doing it right now,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I
So
like that. I want to dig into
I
the
borrowed it from
the
you.
yeah, good, good. I borrowed a lot from you too. So um I want to dig into the I'm not good enough
Okay.
disease, the disease of the mind of I'm not good enough. This is something I've struggled with my whole life. I know where mine comes from. I talk very openly about it. It comes from growing up being gay, not accepting it about myself, and rejecting my shadows, rejecting the things I don't like about myself. And that created a very strong presence of perfectionism in my life. I developed perfectionism as a mask to wear to cover up shame, which the voice of shame says I'm not good enough. So I understand where mine comes from. I'm curious for you with your I'm not good enough. What does it? Where does it come from for you?
I think there's been a couple events, in my life. When I was same year, 4 or 5 was a big year for me. I knew that I wanted to do something to this boy, and I didn't, and I knew that that was unique and different.
Hmm.
So I decided when I was 5 that no matter what, I'd always be my unique self, no matter what that looked like. So, and then a couple years later, right? Yeah, a couple years later, I had the most difficult time putting a story together. I mean, like, when I get nervous, right? Like, there's something about my mind that kind of goes in a non-chronological order, right? And so it was really hard for me when I was 8, 9, 10 to tell stories in chronological orders. And I went to like special ed classes like myself.
Okay.
And that was tough.
Yeah.
And and then, interestingly enough, when I was 10 or 11, we were going to move yet again in my life. And because we moved around a lot. And I did this test, and these people said, your son is like brilliant. And we think he should skip a grade. And my parents and I were like, what? Like, he was just in learning disability classes like 2 years ago, and now you're telling him. And so that did quite the number on me. And I think it was in that moment that I realized I will forever strive for excellence and be the best ever, you know? And so that means I was straight A's from then on, you know, valedictorian, graduated high school 3 years. Did I mention that? Yeah. So like all these things, like I just wanted to always be better and do better. And I still am very much like that in my corporate America sense. Like I'm always striving to be better, which is such a juxtaposition from the spiritual side of me.
Yeah.
However, that's where I think I'm not enough, or I'm not good enough. It was all self-imposed. The gay thing was just another part of who I am, that I embraced it very early on. You know?
That's really cool. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. So that's not so much a part of your story, the gay aspect of things. It was more so around the learning disabilities and being a little bit different, and then having that experience of the world around you.
Yeah. I mean, even a couple of years ago, I was doing this pilot, and I was like, I consider myself to be very in touch with my masculine and very in touch with my feminine most of the time. And I like, on camera, I said that I was gender fluid. And for me, it's like very interesting because I definitely identify with being a male, but I also like have all these feelings about like being a female too as well. So it's very, very interesting. So
what does that look like? Well, first off, for people that don't understand what gender fluidity is, can you talk a bit about that? And then the second part of the question would be about the feminine aspects of yourself. Like, how do you identify with them?
Okay, so there's in today's world, in the 21st century, there's a gender spectrum. There's about 30 different terms, politically speaking, to how to be in between genders, right? So there's male, female, and then everything in between. And then there's, you know, what you were born as, which is cis male, cis female. And then there's how you identify and your gender expression. So there's so many different, there's a rainbow of flavors. And so you know, there's people who are, So gender fluid is kind of, I know I was born a male, and I know I'm a male. I know, obviously, I have the physical apparatus of a male. The female parts come in is I've always felt like I'm a straight man, a straight female trapped in a gay man's body. And I know that a lot of gay people like kind of say that, right? Like, I'm a black woman in a gay man's body, but I actually feel that. And like, I have all the emotions and senses and range of emotions and intuitive intelligence and emotional intelligence of a female, much more feminine, right? Than I do the masculine side of me. And I honestly, until I was about 30 something, I did not know how to relate to guys. So I learned everything about football I could from a girl. Interestingly. And then I started to kind of bond with guys over sports. And then I was like, oh, you're like the same as I am, only not. So it's a very interesting story myself. But so what else and I also, I don't know, even being intimate, like I like to be warmed up. And, you know, when I talk to my girlfriends, like I'm much more in line with what they're feeling, and but the cool part is I can see how the guy thinks and how the girl thinks. So I have this really, I think, kind of great understanding of both genders and how they feel in relationships. Anyway.
That's,
Did I
I think
answer your
that's,
question?
yeah, that's super cool. There's a term called two-spirited, which is very much that you have
Mm,
access to both portals. But I really truly believe that most human beings have access to both portals. But what ends up happening is most men, they shame their feminine energy and they block it. Because they come from the belief around masculinity that we have to be alpha, we have to be this, we have to be that. So
right.
alpha means repression of feminine and expression of
Mm,
masculine. So it's very
love that.
interesting. So I
Yeah.
think what's happening
Mm,
right now on this planet is we're start to seeing a rise of the divine feminine, and people are going to start to come back into balance with their dualism of masculine and feminine, and we're going to start to see a lot of resistance to it via shame and things like that. And but
mm,
it's as we express it and move through it, we have to experience the shame, and then once it releases from our being, we can start to come into contact with that side of our thing. So I do think we're going to see a lot more gender fluidity happening. We're going to see a lot more expression of the divine feminine. It's really, really cool. I think it's really cool.
yeah. I have so much to say, but
Yeah,
no,
say it. I want to
no,
hear
no,
it.
I totally two-spirited. Yeah, no, when the first time I read that, I was like, that's me, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I I identify with that. I also feel that we're coming to a place where we must understand each other more. So we must understand our own masculine and feminine, and then
Hmm.
in order to be in relationship with someone else, whether it be best friends or I'm really talking romantically involved, but
Yeah.
we really must start to understand the other, like the other emotions and how the other is feeling,
Yeah.
because we're coming, especially now, like I feel like a lot of couples are butting heads even more
Yeah.
or falling in love even more, like, you
Yeah.
know, just because we're now trapped together or isolated together.
Yeah.
And so we get to, I just really want for people to understand more of where the other person's coming from. I feel like that can never be a bad thing in relationships.
Yeah. It just made me think of what you said before about feeling your feelings, because that comes into play so strongly here. Because if we want to be understood and felt, we have to be able to be understood and felt inside. Because, like we say, the relationships we participate in are a reflection of what's happening for us. They're just mirrors. So if we can learn to become more in touch with our own feelings, we can therefore become more empathetic for other people and therefore receive
Absolutely.
that back. So how do we start to become more in tune with our feelings? Do you have any strategies that you can share with the audience about that?
I mean, I honestly think there's this, I believe that there is kind of a, how do we say this, different parts to our lives, if you will. So there's the part where, like, there's our childhood, and then there's our adolescence, and we learn things from each of those, and then we carry those, whether they're blockages, obstacles, challenges, or lovely memories, we carry them with us.
Mm-hmm.
um, and then we get to our 20s and 30s, and I feel like as we evolve, again, we must handle, manage all of these obstacles and all these survival mechanisms, and we have to break them down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we get to, um, I guess, understand and be the true us, right? The authentic ourselves. So I feel like it's the very same thing with what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Like, without understanding where we've come from, we can not understand where anyone else is coming from, you
Exactly.
know.
Yeah.
So I mean, I know RuPaul says that, like, if you don't love yourself, how the hell is anyone else going to love you, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like that. So loving ourselves is doing the work, um is handling and dealing and channeling with all of the stuff that you've been through into a beautiful place to who you are, and use that to move forward, right, and move other people around you. And I just want to mention, like, compassion. I keep getting these words, you know, obviously I feel and receive a lot of information, so they're
Mm-hmm.
just saying you must talk about compassion, you must talk about compassion when it comes to other people.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the first thing is compassion for yourself, right? So after we're doing all this work, we get to, as we're doing all this work, we get to forgive ourselves. for anything and everything that we've done. And then I think from like forgiveness begets compassion. And so once we have compassion for ourselves, then the love starts pouring in. And I feel like it's the same with everyone else, everyone else around us, especially with romantic relationships. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because they're like, you got off track at some point. I was like, yeah, but I want to come back to compassion. That's, I just think it's, and compassion is passion that flows through you, right? So to yourself or to others. And it's the non-judgmental way. And believe me, we all judge ourselves all the time, and we all judge everyone else around us.
Yeah.
The practice is to find the compassion for everyone. I mean, it's honestly, I also had a lot of therapy along the way, right? So in therapy, I learned that, like my parents, I love my parents, I'm very grateful for my parents, but we had a tough time in my 20s. And I realized that they are who they are, and I needed to accept them as they are.
Yeah.
And I've always been told that I'm going to teach my parents about unconditional love in this lifetime. And that's what I learned, was unconditional love for myself. And then by extension, through compassion, extending it to others.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Self-compassion has been a huge practice for me, moving away from perfectionism, because perfectionism is all about how hard can I be on myself. So one of the things that I do is, when I find myself when that starts to amp up, I ask myself the question, how can I be more gentle with myself right now? In this moment, how can I be more gentle with myself right now? And that is the practice of allowance, because whatever comes up, right? What do I need right now is another one. And whatever comes up, you just allow that to be. If you need a nap, have a nap. If you need some food, have some food, right? So it's really just about allowing things to come into your experience and just let them be there.
I love that. I love that. I'm going to use that, because I can be very hard on myself.
Yeah. Good. So there's a fun thing that we do you're the first person, I shouldn't say we do it, because you're the first person that we're doing it, but so it's called How Much of Me Can I Be?
I'm ready.
How much of me can I be? So this is a game that I came up with. So I've come up with 31 questions, and they're kind of like hot seat questions. So they're questions that allow the guests to practice vulnerability and practice sharing a piece of themselves at the level to which they choose, right? So so I pick a number between 1 and 31, and we'll see what question we got for you today.
I got to go with my favorite number, 24.
24, okay. Question 24, we have: when's the last time you felt vulnerable, and how did you deal with those feelings?
I knew it was going to be something about that. I think it was a couple days ago, to be honest. Okay. I was sitting with my husband, and I think it was Friday or Saturday. And I looked at him, and I was just like, I feel like I'm so not in alignment with what I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm so hating my life right now. And I'm exaggerated gay, so like that's I always add color to everything, but I was just like I'm just talking to my husband, right? So I'm like, I'm hating this right now, and like, because I have HR clients and I have intuitive business coaching clients, and the HR clients are lovely and wonderful, and I'm grateful. It's just it's a lot of what I don't want to be doing.
Yeah.
And I sat there, and just tears kind of came out of my eyes, and I was like, I just want to take better care of us. As I get more emotional now too. And taking care of us in all senses, right? And doing that which propels me forward, which was your very first question: what passions me, what enthuses me, and I just wanted to be doing so much more. And so that was the last time. And I don't really ask for help very often, and I'm sure we can dive into that too. But I honestly, I go to very few people as mentors, and I I respect the hell out of the people that I ask questions of, you know.
Yeah.
So to ask even my husband is just, I just said, like, what do you think I should do?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I don't, like, that's not a question that I ask very often. And
So good.
yeah.
So good. Vulnerability, that's one of the hardest things when practicing vulnerability, is asking for help. Most people really struggle with this, and especially people in our realm of things where we coach and we're expected to have all the answers for everything. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves, so we don't want to be vulnerable and ask for help. And that's been one of the biggest things that I've learned in the last couple months is allowing other people to inspire me is a big one for me, because I feel like I always have to be the one to inspire others, and then my bucket gets drained very quickly. So how can I allow other people to inspire me? So it's nice to be able to connect with other people like yourself and different people that I follow and their work is it allows me to fill up my bucket, which is beautiful.
Awesome.
So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So there's another thing that I like to do. It's called This Is Me Tip of the Week. So basically it's this is me is a term that I coined to help people own who they are, right? This is me. We hold ourselves in a beautiful container of space to be who we are. And that's what this podcast is all about. So if you were to share a tip for our viewers to be able to do that, to step into the truth of who they are and practice it for this week, what would you say?
Oh, I wish I had prepared for this question.
I like things to come through as a download. So like for people,
Yeah.
like it doesn't have to be perfect. It can be, sometimes the most beautiful gifts we're given are the most simple reminders of things we already know, right? So what's one thing that you think would benefit other people to help them own their energy and own who they are?
I think all day it's been like accepting where you are now and understanding that this is the journey that we're on.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that people that listen to your podcast obviously are striving for more in their life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as am I every day. So what I want, and this is what my golden nugget that was given to me today. So I'm going to share this. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
just going to do anything. I'm going to share this. Is accepting where you are, because it only gets better from here.
Mm.
You know, I think I love the adage, the best is yet to come.
Yeah.
And so by accepting where you are, I can feel it as I'm talking to you. Like all day I've been working on accepting where I am,
Yeah.
you know, because I want to be so much further with my YouTube channel. I want to be so much further with my children's book and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so accepting where I am has allowed me to smile today and be gentle with myself.
Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot. And it's about, sometimes it's about drawing ourselves back to the present moment, right? Because when we're having those moments of feeling like we need to be further, we're living outside of ourselves in this imaginary place where we think we need to be to feel better. But that's a form of self-abandonment, right? When we say, I'm not enough for me right now, we're abandoning ourselves and we're perpetuating the I'm not enoughness of our experience. So it's about drawing ourselves back to the present moment. I like to put my hands on my heart, like I said, and I say, I am here. This is me. I'm here right now in this moment. And I'm grateful for the followers I have. I'm grateful for the work I've put forth in myself, and just really, really ground yourself into the here-ness. It's been very effective for me. So I think we just shared like 10 strategies that they can use for this week.
You know what? One thing I want to say too about the COVID-19 situation, it is forcing us to be more present, and all of us be more present, because we're all having so many emotions. So I'm loving that aspect of it.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So I do want to obviously thank you for coming on today, because
oh my God, please.
your expertise is profound, and you bring forth a beautiful energy. That alone, your energy alone is such a transmission for people to receive, whether it's through audio or video. Like, just to see your energy, feel your energy, that alone can change the world and change people. So I'm extremely grateful to be able to share this
Wow.
last hour with you.
Thank you.
And I mean that truly from the bottom of my heart. Um, I want people to be able to connect with you. So why don't you share a little bit about how people can reach out to you if they feel the need and are feel called to reach out to you?
Sure. I have two websites, sethsantoro.com, and then I am Seth Eliot, 1L, 1T. So I am SethEliot.com. You can pretty much find me at any handle like Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook at I am Seth Eliot. And
Awesome.
you can get my book, How I Learned to Smile from the Inside, on Amazon, pretty much anywhere in the world. So,
yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you. It's been an honor. Love it.
Yeah. So, and I wanted to thank the audience for your patience today. I know there was a little bit of background noise. Someone was drilling while I was, but this is my first episode. So I'm like, you know what, congrats. Yay. So
cool.
There's a bit of a learning curve for me. So appreciate your patience as the audience. On the next show, we have a really cool person coming on, Blake Spence, who is going to be talking about masculinity. So I'm excited about that. And please leave your comments and your reviews, whether you're seeing this on YouTube or through a podcast. Leave your reviews. And I'm always going to be posting a song of the week, because I get a lot of my authenticity through the music I listen to, and I love sharing music. So every week I get downloaded music to myself, things that come up for me, and they're very aligned to where I'm at in my growth. And I know people that follow my work are also aligned to this, the same work that I'm doing. So I'm going to be sharing a song in the show notes. So be sure to check out what that song is going to be each week, and feel free to leave your review of today's episode as well. Again, thank you so much. Appreciate your time and your energy that you put forth in this.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.